Texas.
That's what I do.
And I've never had anybody go, "Where's Texas?"
I've never had anybody say that either, but I have. So when I was in Singapore, I got into a taxi cab one time, and the guy was like, "Hey, where are you from?" And I was like, "Texas." And he goes, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah, what?" I was like, every time somebody comes and gets in the car and I ask them where they're from like Chicago or New York or California, and I ask them where they're from, they say America. But if I ask somebody from Texas where they're from, they always say Texas. And I said, yeah, because it's better than everybody else. Like,
There's an independent spirit.
that's why, right? Like,
I guess. I mean, those cities are big, important, popular cities.
yeah, sure.
But they don't say this. Okay, so interesting thing.
It's not the same though.
If you're from Chicago, you might actually say Chicago, but you wouldn't say Illinois, right? We identify the state.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And if you say you're from New York, you mean you're from New York City, right?
Probably.
So,
yeah.
So would you
New York,
go? Yeah. Are there other states where Alaska might be that way? Like I'm from Alaska. Maybe we go state first.
I just thought it was funny because I didn't really have a solid answer for the guy.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that, well, we're just better than everybody else. That was the answer I had. I couldn't really I didn't have a technical, oh, this is why.
Okay.
What's also funny about that though is I was in Asia. I think I was in Japan. It might have been Japan. But I was in the subway with 10 billion people that they have over there.
Yeah.
And I was walking down one of the halls, and this lady was walking towards me, and she had a T-shirt on, and on the front of it had America, like an outline of America. But then Texas was more pronounced. It was bigger and kind of in front of. And underneath it said, "I'm from Texas. What country are you from?"
I like that shirt.
And I thought, oh, man, that's hilarious. Yeah. All the way over in Asia saw that, right?
Yeah.
I could talk about Texas all day long.
No,
we're gonna that state. Born in Texas, raised here.
We're gonna talk about something technical today. You were goofing off last week with a history discussion, and the week before.
I wouldn't call that goofing off.
Okay, it was
our 250th.
I know
anniversary, man.
Good discussion. It was a good discussion. We should celebrate this remarkable place that we live. But, and then before that, Ashley and Preston did a short one on just a little bit of the work that Ashley's doing.
Test drive.
Drive, yeah. They attempted to do an impression of the two of us, which it didn't. I don't know that it landed.
I didn't watch that.
Yeah, it happened.
They did an impression.
Well, Preston tried. Ashley was not really up for that.
Oh, wow.
Challenge. But anyway, they worked.
Did they do it justice or
Ooh. Well, I mean, I'm not sure what would be doing it justice, but
it was an attempt.
Did you watch it?
I was present.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this week we're going to do something technical because back to one of our technical sessions, we got to do those to keep this thing legit. And I want to talk about SQL databases versus Oracle, because you were in some discussions recently about some engineering applications and how important the database was, and start talking about APIs. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the database behind these, the accessibility of that data and the innovation that comes from the accessibility of that data is a big factor in the successful use of some of these tools.
Yeah, that's a huge factor, man. How easy can you get to your own data to use it in your workflows and processes? And we just went through, what, 2-3 weeks ago now? We came back from the Octave conference, and this was a little bit of a topic in the technical user forum at the Octave conference as well, right?
Yeah, I think there was a statement about how because of centralized hosting and API usage that at some point there will be no access to the database. And
That's a bad strategy.
And we had our discussion on the personality of or the persona of an administrator, and then we did a discussion on the whole administrative group. And both of those topics are like, both of those subject matters are heavily dependent upon understanding that data structure and leveraging it, using it for innovative ways to gather the data to help the project, using it for troubleshooting when the app's not quite performing right and you want to figure it out. And I'm not sure that people really understand how important that data structure is, and the access to that database.
Yeah, well, they might not understand the importance of the data structure, but definitely the access to the data and the information in it, right? I think a lot of times people miss how important that is.
So, little backstory. For me, I was working as an automation and control engineer, and I needed two things out of the engineering project, two primary data sets. I needed a tag list, like my instrument list, to do my PLC programming, and I needed the I/O wiring. Where was it loaded in the PLC so that I could, set up that tag properly, whether it's a transmitter or a switch or a control valve, and I needed to wire it to the right spot in the PLC so then we could build our program. And we were getting those out of InTools at the time, right? The old Intergraph InTools. And I would log into the system.
Facet instrumentation.
Now it's Octave Facets Instrumentation. And that name will probably change again before we get comfortable with it. But that's what it is at the moment. OFI.
Oh, man, that's a good one. OFI?
We just start calling it that.
OFI.
OFI.
Yeah, okay.
So what I would do is I would open the tool, I'd log in, and then I'd go run a report, and I'd save it to CSV, and save it on my network, and I'd go run the second report, and I'd save it to CSV, and then I'd open Access, and I would import the data into my Access database where I was doing all the work.
Yeah, okay.
But that little process cost me like 10, 15 minutes.
Took too long.
It took too long. And I was like, man, I want to do that frequently. I want to do that every morning, right? I want to start with fresh data or something. And it felt like it was kind of goofy for me to have to do that every morning.
Yeah.
And that was the first time when, as a project person, we kind of went to the administration team and were like, hey, is there a better way to do that? And now that way might be publicized as using an API. But at that point, the way was, well, hey, there's a database behind that. I could give you read-only access, and you could go query that data and import it into your tool directly. And that takes like 5 seconds. So if I've got 15 minutes versus 5 seconds, that's a value proposition that makes sense. And so at that point, I was granted a read-only account to look behind, at that time, that instrumentation tool, but done the same thing with PNID or 3D over the years, whatnot. But that was super helpful to me. We built a whole bunch of tools off of that to manage change, see what was happening, push the loading into our loading spot, do a whole bunch of cool stuff. And that, to me, I never looked back from that. Like once you see that friendliness of the data behind the scenes just in a SQL database, I was like, this is great. I'm going to use this for a whole bunch of stuff. What was the first time that you saw that?
No, I mean, I've seen that, like what you're describing and out the history of actually using some of these applications. I would say, though, that you've been in the industry for 25
years.
5 years. I've been in the industry for 25 years. I would say that a lot of the EPCs and now the owners that are adopting these tools, that's one of the reasons why they adopt the tools, right? Is because they they have that back end access, and they can use that for their workflows, their processes. They can create their customized utilities to help them do their job better.
Well, there's a
right?
front end that is kind of for the normal stuff. It's where you would do your normal drawing, data entry, kind of create the baseline for the project. But then you allow the creativity and the innovation through the data. Like, you don't give the data access to most of the team, right?
No.
But to a select few, you do, and you say, hey, I want you to then multiply the value of this tool.
Well, I think
by doing the cool stuff that you can do with all that data.
That's a big point too, right? And I just had a discussion about this recently, where those tools are authoring tools, and you have a limited number of authors that are getting in there, creating loop drawings, creating specification sheets, creating the P&IDs, but your consumers of that information almost could be unlimited, right? Depending on how they want to see that information, depending on how you can get that information out.
Well, yeah, that example where I was an automation engineer, we weren't authoring data. We were just consuming it. So I was spending time going to get it that I really didn't need to spend, because it didn't matter to my job. I just wanted to get it.
You were consuming it for a specific use case for automation enginering.
Correct.
Right?
The same way electrical would consume it to compare with their electrical discipline, or something like that.
And there's different use cases per discipline, or per, even to a certain extent, per task, what you're trying to do, right? And I think that's one of the big value propositions in applications like the what is it, OFI now? OFI.
Yeah.
What would be P&ID? OFPID.
Off. Yeah.
I think that's one of the big, in the Octave engineering design like solutions. I think that's one of the big advantages, is that their back-end databases are open for those people like you, for those companies that can define their own use cases almost, and then like get that out to their enhance, right? Get that out to their people and get it into their workflows and into their, because some of those authoring tools you can't do that. Even if it's on your network, they have a proprietary backend, they have a proprietary system.
Yeah.
Or they make it to where, they use, you wanted to talk about Oracle versus SQL. They use more complex data structures that are harder to get information out of.
Yeah. Right. So
I think it was you that was talking the other day that says that kind of limits the innovation. Right.
I think it does.
Kind of shuts it down.
So if you look at sort of vendor versus vendor, like Aviva kind of leans toward the proprietary Dabacom database, and that dude is harder to interface with. I just got to be honest with you. It is.
Oh yeah.
And then other tools like the old PDS software for Hexagon Octave, it stored half of its data in a MicroStation file and half of its data in an Oracle database. And it's like, okay, so now I got a hybrid. Some of it's in a fairly accessible database, some of it's in a file, and then others are in local databases, or even others are in like an access file or something like that. And so, like, of all of those that just discussed, the ones that use a open enterprise level backend are the friendliest if you have access to
I think they're the friendliest and most powerful.
Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the proprietary database formats. Now, the other thing then is you got some tools that say, hey, I can run on multiple database platforms. So you can install this tool and choose a SQL database, or you can install it and choose an Oracle database, or maybe install it and even use something else like an Access or whatever. So that's kind of is what the original premise for this discussion was going to kind of be, when you have the opportunity to use SQL or Oracle, you kind of have these tribes, that grew up in one of those two neighborhoods, and they have an allegiance to them. But I think in that comparison, I have a preference. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, that's SQL. I don't know. Oracle is difficult to work with, in my opinion.
Yeah, now they're not yet a sponsor. We don't want to offend them, but let's share some honest feedback about that. Why is that? And what we're talking about is like, as a techie, as an administrator or a developer, there is just an easier access point to using SQL.
Yeah, I mean, and it could be just a bias because what you
grew up
on, right? Like you were saying. I think a long time ago, 15 years ago, Oracle databases were probably more secure, handled conflicts better. Like if two applications or two calls were going to the same record or something of that nature, right? It would handle that a little bit better than SQL did. But SQL's come a long way, and it's still more friendlier to use.
So let's put this in the context of this discussion. First of all, we're primarily talking about engineering information. So we're talking about equipment, instrumentation, wires, cables, stuff like that. When you talk big data, you talk financial data, you talk about stuff like that. I think that's a little different. Like I did a little, I try to do most of this podcast just on the fly without overthinking it because I don't want it to come across as I'm reading a script. But a little bit of research kind of said, okay, for those financial transactions and whatnot, Oracle is a leader. Okay, that's fine. I don't do that. What I do know is coming in and trying to build a chemical plant or something or a facility and try to gather my data and analyze it and do some cool stuff with it. Oracle's been a pain in my butt trying to work with, to be honest.
It's more difficult. You could, I don't know, if you're getting into lines of code, you could do like the same lines of code in an SQL database will take like 2 to 3 times more to the same type of functionality.
Well, what I will say is kind of what you mentioned earlier. I've seen at least like the PNID product from Octave, for example. It has a work share that can be connected to different offices simultaneously connected through Oracle because Oracle had a real-time data sharing sort of technology that I think is still slightly different than SQL's. And so that was a bit of an advantage. But in general, like user friendliness from a code, from a guy writing queries and reports, I have found SQL just way easier to navigate. You can lock up an Oracle database in a whole bunch of weird ways with hidden procedures and hidden things that maybe you can do in SQL, but nobody really does as much.
You can do some of that in SQL, but yeah, it's not. Some of that is inherently built into the Oracle structure, right? The way you can lock up the database, like you're saying.
Yeah, and so like the number one thing that I think is different is SQL Management Studio is one of the easiest things to just hop into and do cool stuff with, to me. Like that may sound dumb, but that software, that's the default software, right, that you use to interface with it. And then when I was trying to work with Oracle, I was like, you could use this thing called Toad.
So you use Toad, right? Toad is like the prominent, well, at least when I was doing it, that was a prominent one, Toad.
Okay. I didn't like it as much. Did you? Did you?
It worked. It's like a, I don't know. It's like a management studio type interface, kind of.
Is it? Yeah. You know how Excel is just like almost everybody, they get into Excel and they're just like, I'm comfortable, right? Not that I think Excel's perfect or anything.
Because you're biased. You grew up on SQL, though.
But what I'm saying is, to me, getting it, wherever I interfaced with Oracle, I was uncomfortable the whole time. I just was. Now, I probably just had the wrong one or something, but it just wasn't as friendly. The code was harder to write. The execution was weirder. The feedback was different. Just everything about it was slightly not as much fun for me. This is a personal journey for me. So I liked the user friendliness of that studio way better than anything I ever interfaced with Oracle.
I think that that's the biggest value proposition, and I also think that that's why SQL has come a long way, because it's come a long way in the past 15 years or so against Oracle. But even in these different type of applications, I think the biggest value proposition is how user friendly is it, and how easily accessible is the information and data behind it.
Okay, so
and I think that's like a huge deal. So if you're going SQL to Oracle, okay, well, you like it more because it's more user friendly. You can get your data out of it easier, theoretically easier in your mind, right? It works the same way with just a regular engineering application. So
I felt like looking at if I open a SQL server and I look at the databases and I look at the permissions, I feel like I can wrap my brain around that structure much more easily than if I pop open and I log into an Oracle box. Feels like it's less the organization, and it may be intentional, right? Maybe a obfuscation thing where they don't want idiots like me looking around. But every time I got into an Oracle database, I was just like, something just is weird here, right? You know what I'm saying? SQL, database 1, database 2. I got it. I figured it out. Over here, you're like, I don't know. So that's one thing. And I think like the structure, the code writing structure though is easier, right? Select star from whatever. I know you can write same basic statement.
Same basics.
But
the syntax is a bit different.
And if you ever pop
functions are a bit different.
Yeah, and if you ever pop open like an Oracle like code procedure block or something, and it's got a bunch of if statements and a bunch of crazy stuff happening. Have you seen any of that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, not a fan. Not a fan. You can do that in SQL, but normal people don't. Now the other thing is, we've had a few clients where we're helping them set up their network, and they're like, "Hey, do these apps run on SQL or Oracle?" And we say, "Well, some of them both, but we typically see these engineering tools in SQL," and they will go, "Good." Because I don't have a single person on staff that understands Oracle. Have you seen that?
Yeah, we've had a few of those clients like recently that have said stuff like that.
Yeah, we just don't have that skill. We probably have it somewhere in our financial department or whatever, but in this sort of portion of our technology company, like we don't have that person.
Yeah.
The Oracle I think the Oracle DBA creature is harder to find than the SQL DBA creature. They're both creatures.
Can we call them wizards, not creatures? I think that sounds terrible.
Let's go with the wizard.
I like wizards better.
I did that for the effect. Because they're deep in the when we drew that thing on the whiteboard, we're like, oh, here's the app support, here's IT support. But that's like a cave. And in the front of that cave are your sort of forward-facing IT guys. Way in the back.
It's the DBA guy.
It's the DBA guy, right? Like the very first time at Wood, we had a DBA, Jeff Capps, right? And he was a long-time DBA that we both worked with. And then he was the only guy, right? I think in a lot of scenarios.
He was the only guy for a long time. I'll put it. He was the only guy that I trusted to actually solve my problems for a long time.
Okay, and he was a little different guy, but I'm like, you know what I mean? He was a wizard, and so, but this was back in the day where almost all meetings were in person. I don't know if you remember, like when I started, like every meeting was in person, almost everything. Like I didn't even have a way to schedule an online meeting. You know that? In like 2005, there was not even that option. You didn't just like add a Teams call. You know what I mean?
You're dating yourself.
I'm just telling you.
That old?
Well, I mean, really, until Skype or Links came around, we didn't even really have that option. So you'd set up a phone call, but you'd actually call them on the phone.
WebEx?
I remember WebEx, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure when I started, I did not even have the ability to schedule a meeting that was not in person. I'm fairly sure of that. Anyway, and in that time frame, somewhere around that 2010-ish, whatever. We hired another DBA, and this was funny. It relates back to the wizard concept. And Jeff sent an email, and he's like, and it was 3 people on it, me, Jeff, and this other guy, Donald. And he said, Mike, meet Don. He's our new DBA. And I thought that was hilarious because it was a meeting through an email, which wasn't the norm at the time, right? Because at that time, you met everybody by physically meeting them or having a phone call.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's a little DBA story there. But DBAs are back. They're set off. They can't see the light at the front of the IT door all the time. And then the Oracle DBA, he's further in the back than the SQL DBA. Is that fair? Am I wrong?
That's
I'm
fair.
not trying to offend anybody. Smart people, but there are less of them, I think,
Yeah.
in the world that we speak in.
In the world that we speak, in engineering, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got,
You get into the data scientist world and data engineering world, probably not.
yeah. Now,
I have my own arguments about that, though.
okay, let's dive down that. Do you want to dive down that
Well,
trail?
yeah, sure. I mean, when I say that they're less there, that you get into the data science world and the data engineering world, and a lot of that world is coming from an IT type background, right? They're not coming from the engineering side, and so they don't understand the data that they're looking at.
Mhm.
That's a problem in my mind.
Well, the DBA, oftentimes, that role does basically come at you and say, look, I'm here for that box.
That one thing.
And I manage that box, and I don't really know what you have in it, and I don't care. But I
Yeah.
steward the backups and that box.
And this
right?
kind of goes to one of our other talks that we had on like the application admins and what their role is. And part of their role is to understand the data structure of the application itself, right? And that's since they're split and they're not gonna focus on just that box. Well, SQL's a lot easier to understand, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I mean, I'll be honest with you. Have you ever opened an Access database? You remember when you could nest like tables within tables or fields within?
Oh yeah,
You could actually do some really
yeah, man.
weird stuff in an Access. I've opened a few Access databases that I had no real idea how it worked. I was trying to figure it out, but it was awkward.
Oh yeah.
And then I've opened a few Oracle databases where I was like, I got to get out of this thing. It is just jacked up. But in SQL, almost every one I've ever opened, I just peek my head in, look around, I'm like, makes sense. I got it. Let's write some queries. That's my experience.
You can do some of the same stuff in SQL. You can have nested queries and tables and views and all kinds of stuff.
You've seen some jacked up Access databases, though, right?
Yeah, I've created some.
See, I didn't. I was like, table 1, table 2, real simple, query 1, query 2. I didn't like that. So anyway, right in the middle. So and this by no means like Access is in this conversation, but it doesn't belong in this conversation. SQL and Oracle are real databases.
Well, I mean, if you go
Access is a toy.
If you go there, you have your Excel database.
Shut up. Don't put those words together. Don't put those words together.
That happens, man. And then you have your Access, and then you have your like. It used to be called SQLite or something like that.
The first one I had was SQL Express.
Express,
That was like a
that's what
little
it was.
personal version.
Right? Yeah, that's like your local.
And there's a MySQL.
Like
I don't
your
even know what that
local
is for
DB.
web programming, I think.
And then you got your enterprises, and that's SQL and Oracle are like the big players in that realm.
Yeah. I first learned in Access, probably Excel, but I wasn't doing much with it. But first learned in Access.
I first learned in Access.
And I thought that Access was awesome. I could do everything. Well, because in that tool.
So you created some of those ones that you were talking
No.
about?
No, I created a reasonable data set, and then I wrote some forms.
You didn't create it. Yeah, see, you created Access forms. You created all
Hold
the
on, the
craziness.
form is nothing but a user interface screen, and then create some macros. So the cool thing, and some reports.
And created some reports.
So Access was like a go-kart with a whole bunch of cool features hanging off the end of it, and you could technically get from point A to point B, but it wasn't street legal. You were just, you know what I mean? You could have a radio, and it's a go-kart, right? And then, but it wasn't registered in the state of Texas. You couldn't drive it.
Yeah.
But then when you get to SQL, the hard transition for me was when you get to SQL, it's just the database. And you're like, where's all the other stuff? How do I write a little app in it? And
that's when you get
SQL's like, you can't do that. You're in the big leagues now, buddy. You got to go get some other tools for that.
There's no graphical interface.
Yeah, I ain't got time for that. Oh yeah, that's the thing. When you were in Access, I would create the joins by dragging them.
By the graphic, yeah.
Yeah, table 1, table 2, drag it together, inner join, left join, whatever. You tell it what you want. And then when you get to SQL, you're like, no, here's a text file, just text pad.
Figure it out.
And at first it was a little hard, but then now, and I know you can do that in a SQL view. I never use that graphical junk anymore. No, because I graduated, right? I got out, I parked the go-kart, set it off to the side, the flat tire, and I was like, you just stay over there. I'm driving a SQL Suburban now. You know what I mean? But what's Oracle? It's like an army tank, right? Super secure. But it really isn't high. You don't want to drive it on the highway. No cruise control.
Every day.
Oracle's going to hate us. Anyway, that was my journey. And the thing is that, like, once you get into SQL, you're like, man, there's a hell of a lot of power here. And I can understand it. It makes sense.
I think it all comes down to data access and usability. And I think that's across the tools. You talked about APIs earlier.
Okay, let's get into APIs.
If you go to the APIs.
Because my little select star, that's the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
I can do whatever I want. But an API is like specially...
Puts that in a box,
It's basically like some administrator came in and said, you don't really want to do all that creative stuff. I think I know exactly what you want to do. And because I'm so wise, that's the API creator, right? He's looking down from above and he's like, you peons, this is exactly the data you're going to want out of my database. Yeah, and then they write a super specific little function where you have to pretty please ask it for something and hope that it comes back useful to you.
Well, you said Wild West, right? You go to the back end and you can see everything.
Unfettered access.
And then you go to the API and you're like, you can actually only see 20%. and it's limited on what functionality you can actually have. And I don't. One is I think, okay, well, if in today's age, maybe 15, 20 years ago, whatever, with your APIs, but in today's age, the client, whoever is authoring the data, owns the data. So you can't limit their access to their own information, right? Like I don't like that. Like you should give it to them, and then you're gonna charge them for seeing 20%. Like no, man. Like if you're gonna do that, just give it to them.
Well,
right?
So here's how this works, Blaine. You know, like you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. If I already know how the data works,
that's the problem.
And then you try to sell me, give it to me in an API. I'm not interested in the API because I already know how the data works.
That's the problem.
And so look, for example, if there's another app like SAP, I don't know the backend database of SAP because it's hidden, right? So if our team gets an API call to grab a piece of equipment from SAP, I'm excited about that. Because that's better than not having it.
Nothing.
Better than nothing. I know it's not outstanding, but it's better than nothing. And when I asked, it was all that was offered, right? But in another scenario, let's say I'm working with a smart P&ID tool that I 100% know the back end of that database. I know the piping table, and I know the instruments, and I know the
You built all
I've
your own
written
widgets.
1,000 queries to extract it, analyze it, check it, troubleshoot it, and then someone says, "Oh, well, we have an API." I'm like, "For what?"
Well, it's not. We have an API. We have an API that only shows you 20% of what you had before.
Yeah, I'm just being honest. This is an honest, transparent podcast. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not making these stories
I'm
up.
the same way, right? Like, oh, well, that's great, your API. I've already got one. I got 20 years in the industry working with this information and data. I know this database.
We're going to have to call an API expert in here to try to tell us that we're wrong. Somebody who loves them. One of these developers that loves them.
I understand.
You know, they're good if you're if you're selling trading cards on the internet, you need an API to get like the card costs and buy it
and
like stocks or something.
I can understand the importance of an API because one of the
controlling it. You're keeping
one
it
of the
safe.
conversations I've had is hey, if you're giving them back end access, for example, like I give you back end, I'm the admin. It's in my domain. You want access, I give it to you, and then you come over there and you write some widget because you're one of those creatures.
True.
You
Developers.
write some widget that pings the database 1,000,000 times a minute.
Ooh, yeah.
Now you're gonna slow my database down.
That's true.
Right? And then it's gonna affect all of the users in the database, and then I'm gonna be unhappy because they're unhappy. Right?
That's true.
But
that could
if
happen.
I force you to go through an API, the API has like processes and standards built in to say you can't do stuff like that.
I know,
Right?
but if I've already taken that toothpaste out, I don't want that tube. I already got the toothpaste.
So there is some give and take here, and
it's a legitimate argument.
There is some like value to an API. My problem with a lot of the APIs, specifically in this engineering data space, is it doesn't. Okay, so you can't ping the database 1,000,000 times a minute, right? Nobody needs that. But I had literally 100% ability to view every field that I needed in the database. And I can't tell you.
And I could get it in bulk.
And I can't tell you
I
off
could go
the
get
top of my
100,000
head
records at once.
exactly what field I needed because that need changed based on my use case or based on my scenario.
Yeah.
But now what you're telling me is I only have 20%.
But it's it's a perfectly architected wise 20%.
And it's only these 20%. I'm like, well, that's not good enough because maybe my automation guy needed, the 30% that's over here, or maybe my piping guy
and that sounded
needed
dumb.
like the 20% over there.
From the architect, that didn't sound useful. But to the project, we found a way to make it useful. Maybe we're using the tool slightly differently. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe we've chosen to use the tool to help another discipline that normally wouldn't do it, or we're getting creative. Yeah. And now all of a sudden I can't interact with it the way that I need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we went down a rabbit hole here. From OFI to API.
I think the point from my perspective is, and I've said it like 3 times, but I'm going to say it one more time. I think the point from my perspective is that if you're going to create engineering applications and an engineering data workspace for multiple people to use, the biggest value proposition is not just the authoring of the data. It's the accessibility of the data and the ease of use of getting it. Right?
Okay.
Like if you make those things hard and you limit it.
And what are people using?
I think you lose that.
What are people layering on top? Let's say I've got this app that's a very powerful, popular, established app in the engineering world. What tool are people layering on top of that right now as a pretty common solution to add bonus value?
Oh, Power BI.
Power BI. Why?
because it's like free.
It's like free.
It's,
And it can have sliders and widgets and pie charts, and it can tell you your progress and where you're doing poorly and all of this stuff. It can look at a 30,000 foot view, and it can zoom in and zoom out. Like basically, there's no limit to the innovation, the value, right? And
No.
so if you are providing the playground to play in, great. That's the ultimate value nucleus. But these other things that see into that can view it and slice it and dice it, and those are the things that really put that like
those are the
asterisk.
things that drive it.
They drive the value. They get
value.
people like us to actually like a tool, right? Because
Yeah.
when a tool's all buttoned up, you're like, ugh, I'll use it. But you know what I mean? But allowing that innovation, allowing that creativity is why people get in these little, like, they embrace the tools,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah.
And so that data access is such a critical part of that.
I think that that's going to become even more important in the next, 5 years with AI. Because AI is going to increase that even more.
Right, because now you're going to say, well, what if AI could help me with my analysis? Or maybe it can do some of the work, or maybe it can compare and provide recommendations. But what does it need for all of that?
It needs access.
It needs data,
It
right?
needs access. It needs data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to like enable their own. What was that little paper clip? You remember that paper clip? And it
Clippy. Wasn't it just Clippy?
Yeah, whatever that thing was. That was the original assistant that we
That
all
was the
just sort of like
assistant.
shoot it off the page or like, get out of here with your annoyingness.
What was that name, Danielle? It was Clippy, wasn't it? I'm like 100% it was Clippy.
Okay. And then when you're on a website and the little chat bot pops up and
I'm
it's
just
like
going to keep saying Clippy.
Clippy. Okay. So everybody kind of wants to like throw their own AI which
Clippy.
It was Clippy.
There
I
we
was
go.
right.
But also we want to be able to take that data and run it through our processes, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So if you have an app and you have an AI module, but I also have a whole bunch of AI development that I've been doing for my company, I'll maybe use the module that's there, but I also want to refer to past jobs and refer to my standards and procedures. And so in order to do that, I want to be able to take my innovative center and attach it to the data that's behind these things. And so far, early results are that doing all of that through the lens of like an API is hard. Less effective.
I would agree.
I'll stop there.
Less effective, hard.
Did we finish? So we're about near the end here. Can we move on from this API discussion? Thanks for strangling that, for wrestling with that one. Did we get to this? This was kind of a SQL Oracle discussion. Did we get to the end of that story? Is there anything else?
I think we're at the end of that one.
Okay.
Did we beat it to death?
I think we kind of did.
Oracle sucks.
I didn't say that. But
Deceased.
What's that?
Cease and desist.
Oh, no.
Cease and
That's not true. It doesn't totally
No, it's
suck.
super effective.
For certain things.
But it's not as much
we
fun.
use it right now. We have some stuff in our systems.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Where we use Oracle. And it has a purpose.
It does.
Just not for everything.
Have a little more fun in SQL. I do. I know. All right. Well, that's what I wanted to cover. Dive into that. So
Good.
thanks for
You know what we need to talk about though? We're going to talk about it next time. Because
Okay.
I just thought about it while we were here. We did the Octave conference. We ran some of the ELTA, so the local technical user forum.
Yeah.
And in that forum, I stepped right into it and made the whole crowd fight each other.
About owners hosting their data.
About owners owning their data from the very beginning.
So that is our handover is a beach part 2 topic, but we just explained it in that one.
I know,
so what you're talking
that
about
was a room. It was a technical room where we had people from the industry, from the engineering side, the EPC side, and we had people from the industry from the owner side. And then I made a comment, and then the room just exploded. So we should talk about that
Okay. That's fair.
because that would be interesting.
That's fair. All right. That's for next time. Are we
Next
good
time.
for today?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys for joining us on this dive into databases. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.